All right, strap yourselves in because we are going deep into the unexplained this time. We've got a whole bunch of stories that you guys sent in about haunted places and strange disappearances and just like general spooky stuff. Those things that make you want to keep the lights on.
It sounds like our listeners are really into the mysterious side of things.
Yeah.
And, it's that human curiosity that's always pushed us to explore and question and see just how much we can really know about the world.
Well, yeah, you know me. Always got to chase those mysteries. So, for this deep dive, to help us navigate all these unexplained events, we're going to be looking at this YouTube video from Anoki Kahani. That means unique story in Hindi, by the way. And they're known for like really digging deep into all this supernatural and unexplained stuff.
Oh, Anoki Kahani, great choice. They do a lot of research and their videos are always super interesting to watch. Where did they start us off this time?
Haunted places. We're talking places with creepy histories and weird stuff happening so often, you'd probably be too spooked to sleep after hearing about them.
Ah, haunted places. I mean, they really capture the imagination, right? Every culture seems to have them, each with its own stories and legends. But what I find really interesting is how those stories often go beyond just ghosts. They can tell us about the history of a place, what people believed, even what they were afraid of.
Okay, so let's get into specifics. The video talks about this Everdeen madhouse. It's in Scotland. Just imagine a place where, like, a doctor said he saw a ghost, and the energy from all the patients who were there before is still hanging around, making it super creepy.
Yeah, asylums, especially older ones, have so many stories about hauntings. And while some people might say it's because of actual ghosts, we have to think about other things too. Being locked up, the sometimes not so great treatments they used back then, all the, trauma that happened there, it leaves a mark. Like the building itself remembers all the pain and suffering.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it. But it makes you wonder, could all those strong emotions actually get embedded in the environment? Like some people say it creates residual energy.
Residual energy, that's a really interesting concept. We don't have scientific proof or anything, but the idea that strong emotions and experiences can leave a trace is something a lot of paranormal investigators believe. Some think you can detect it through changes in the electromagnetic field or the temperature. Others think it's more like a psychic impression, a feeling that something's there.
Okay, Scotland might be a bit far for some of us, but how about something closer to home? The video also talks about Salem, Massachusetts. I mean, that place is practically dripping with history. You can almost feel the weight of everything that happened there, the witch trials, the persecution, the executions. It's all there.
Salem is a perfect example of how our perception of a place is tied to its history. The trauma of the witch trials is so ingrained in Salem's collective memory that's no wonder people say they feel uneasy or see weird things there. It's like the echoes of those events are still reverberating, creating an atmosphere that some interpret as, supernatural.
But here's the thing. It's not just historical events that make these haunted hotspots. The video also goes into these, mysterious disappearances and unexplained time slips. We're talking about people vanishing without a trace, sometimes coming back with bizarre stories about lost time and experiences that just don't make sense. Have you ever heard about those cases?
Oh, definitely. Those cases are especially intriguing because they really make you think about how we understand time and reality. I mean, there are documented cases of people going missing for hours, days, even years, and then suddenly reappearing with no memory of where they were or how they got back.
There's one story in the video that really got me. It's about this man who claims he spent a whole month in some kind of time-warped world, a place where time and space just didn't work like they're supposed to. He talked about meeting weird beings and experiencing stuff that just defied explanation. It's almost like stepping into a different dimension.
That sounds like what some researchers call a time slip, where a person somehow steps outside the normal flow of time. And while a lot of people might say these stories are just hallucinations or made up, there are some who think there could be places where, the fabric of space-time is thinner, allowing for these temporary shifts in reality. It's a fringe theory, for sure, but it's one that definitely keeps people interested in the topic.
Right, this is where things start to get seriously mind-bending. So we've got haunted places, time slips, and now the video goes into last words and premonitions. Is it just me, or do final utterances always have this eerie quality, especially when they seem to hint at something beyond our understanding?
Oh, I totally get that feeling. Throughout history, people have told stories about those on their deathbed saying cryptic things or making predictions that seemed impossible. It's only natural for us to try and find meaning in those final moments, to wonder if maybe our loved ones are trying to tell us something from the other side.
The video mentions this one case that really creeped me out. It's about this person who, right before vanishing without a trace, said, "I am looking at him." I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a horror movie. Was it a delusion, a premonition, or an actual encounter with something unseen?
Yeah, those last words are definitely unsettling. And while skeptics might say it was just delirium or, the brain doing weird things as it shuts down, there are others who believe it points at something deeper, a connection to a realm we just don't understand. There are documented cases of deathbed visions where people say they saw deceased loved ones or felt this incredible peace and clarity that defies explanation.
Okay, now I'm hooked, but there's so much more to uncover. We're just scratching the surface here with this video.
It's amazing how these stories kind of blur the line between what we think is real and what we might just call superstition. But that's where things get really interesting, right? Exploring those areas where logic and the unexplained kind of bump into each other.
Totally. It's like we're peeling back the layers of reality, getting these glimpses of something, well, deeper, something we don't fully get.
Speaking of not fully getting things, the video talks about children's scary drawings.
Oh yeah, the art that kids make. It's often so imaginative and whimsical, but then sometimes there's this darkness, an eeriness that can be really unsettling. But it makes you think maybe kids, with their, unfiltered way of seeing things, are picking up on something that we as adults miss.
Right, like they're seeing the world through a totally different lens, noticing energies or, entities that we're just too jaded to see anymore.
Well, from a psychological perspective, children are still developing, right? Their brains are figuring out how the world works, so their drawings can reflect their fears, anxieties, even their sense of self as it's forming. Those monsters they draw might represent real-life worries that they can't really put into words yet. That makes sense. The video shows this one drawing that totally freaked me out. It was a kid's drawing of this shadowy figure that he said visited him at night. The details were so specific, so creepy, that it made me think, is this just an overactive imagination or something more?
It's definitely a haunting image. And while it's tempting to jump to, paranormal conclusions, we got to remember that kids are really suggestible. A scary story, a bad dream, even just seeing something out of context can stick with them and show up in their drawings.
Yeah, that's true. But what about those cases where you have kids from different families who haven't heard the same stories or anything, and they draw almost the exact same creepy figure or describe the same unsettling experience? How do you explain that?
That's where the mystery deepens, huh? Some researchers say those shared experiences could point to this collective unconscious, this wellspring of images and symbols that are just part of being human. Others say it might be a form of cultural contagion, where ideas and beliefs spread through social networks, even among young kids.
Okay, this next topic might hit close to home for some people listening. Have you ever gotten that deja vu feeling, like you've been in a situation before even though you know you haven't? Or maybe you saw someone who looked exactly like you, like a doppelganger, just out of the corner of your eye.
Doppelgangers. The idea of seeing your double has been around for centuries, freaking people out. In a lot of cultures, it's seen as a bad omen, like something bad is going to happen, maybe even death.
Oh, I've definitely had those deja vu moments that leave you feeling totally disoriented, like you've stepped out of your own timeline or something. It's weird and kind of unsettling. But what about doppelganger sightings? Are they just our minds playing tricks on us, or is there something more to it?
From a psychology standpoint, there are a few ways to explain doppelganger sightings. There's this thing called autoscopy, a rare neurological condition where someone sees a hallucination of themselves. Then there's Capgras delusion, where someone believes that a loved one has been replaced by an imposter who looks exactly like them.
So basically our brains are messing with us, creating these phantom doubles that feed into our deepest fears and superstitions.
In a way, yeah. But it's interesting how the doppelganger idea goes beyond just personal experiences. It pops up in folklore and mythology all over the world, which suggests we're all kind of fascinated by this idea of a second self, a shadow self, that exists alongside our conscious mind.
Like that saying, everyone has a dark side. But what about those stories where more than one person sees the doppelganger? How do we explain that?
Those cases are especially interesting because they make you question if it's just individual perception. Some researchers say those shared sightings could be a kind of collective hallucination, maybe triggered by everyone being in the same emotional state or just being really suggestible at that moment.
All right, so we've covered haunted places, time slips, creepy kids' drawings, and doppelgangers. It seems like the deeper we go, the more questions pop up.
And that's what makes exploring the unexplained so awesome. It's a journey that doesn't really have an end, this constant uncovering of mysteries that makes us rethink what we think we know and expands our understanding of what might actually be possible.
Well, this Anoki Kahani video doesn't stop there. It goes on to talk about all sorts of strange and scary customs from around the world. Like, we're talking rituals, traditions, and beliefs that connect to the supernatural, the occult, the power of the unknown.
People have always been fascinated by magic and the occult, right? Throughout history, they've tried to communicate with spirits, harness unseen forces, and basically gain some control over the unpredictable stuff like life and death.
The video specifically mentions voodoo, this ancient practice from Africa that involves summoning spirits, fortune telling, and even the possibility of possession. Movies always make it look super dark and dangerous, but I wonder if there's more to it than that.
Voodoo, just like a lot of spiritual traditions, is often misunderstood and misrepresented. At its core, it's a complex system of beliefs and practices that aim to connect with the Loa, these powerful spirits that control different parts of life. It's a religion that's big on balance, respecting your ancestors, and the idea that the physical and spiritual worlds are connected.
So it's not just about sticking pins in dolls and casting curses like Hollywood would have us believe.
Not at all. While those things might be part of some branches of voodoo, they're often blown out of proportion and taken out of context. Most practitioners use their knowledge and connection to the Loa for healing, protection, and guidance.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. It seems like a lot of these unexplained phenomena, whether it's haunted places, time slips, or even ancient spiritual practices, people tend to view them with fear and misunderstanding.
You're right. It's often easier to just dismiss something we don't get as dangerous or evil than to try and understand it from a different angle.
Okay, get ready for this next one because it might keep you up at night. We're going into the world of shadow people.
Ah, yes. Shadow people. Those quick glimpses of dark figures lurking at the edge of our vision, especially in the dark. You see them a lot in paranormal reports, and people usually say they feel dread and unease when they see them.
Have you ever felt like someone was watching you, but when you turned around, there was no one there? Or maybe you saw something move out of the corner of your eye, but when you looked, it was gone.
Yeah, those experiences can be super creepy. And while some people might say it's paranormal activity, there are scientific explanations too. Sleep paralysis, that thing where you're aware of your surroundings but can't move, often comes with hallucinations, like seeing shadowy figures. Then there are hypnagogic hallucinations. Those happen as you're falling asleep and can be really vivid and scary.
So our brains could be creating these shadow people.
In a lot of cases, yeah. Our brains are always trying to make sense of the world, even when the information isn't clear. In low light, our eyes might misinterpret shadows, movements, or even patterns on the wall as human-shaped figures.
That's kind of comforting, actually. Like, our brains are just filling in the gaps, even if it freaks us out a bit.
Exactly. But that doesn't mean every shadow person experience can be explained away so easily. There are times when multiple people see the same figure, or when it interacts with its surroundings in a way that just doesn't make sense.
Okay, so we're back in that gray area where science and the unexplained kind of overlap. And that leads us to what might be the most chilling topic yet, predictions and death.
Humans have always been fascinated by death and whether or not you can predict it. I mean, we've always tried to understand what happens after we die, to know what's on the other side, and maybe even find a way to avoid death altogether.
The video talks about several cases where people seem to predict their own deaths, and they were often scarily accurate. It's like they had a peek into the future, a premonition of their own end.
Precognitive dreams, where you dream about something that actually happens later, are a real thing. Some people might say it's just coincidence, but there are cases where the details are so specific, so unlikely, that you can't explain it rationally.
There's this one example in the video that's really chilling. A man supposedly predicted his own death a week before it happened, and he even described exactly how it would happen. And to everyone's horror, his prediction came true, down to the last detail.
That level of accuracy is definitely unsettling. Skeptics might say it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy, like the person believed it so strongly that they subconsciously acted in a way that made it happen. But there could be other explanations too.
Like what? Is there a scientific way to explain how someone could accurately see their own death coming?
Some researchers think precognition might be connected to quantum entanglement. The idea that two particles can be linked even when they're far apart.
Yeah.
If our consciousness is somehow entangled with future events, maybe we can access information about those events through precognitive dreams or intuition.
Okay, my brain is officially fried. We've gone from haunted houses to quantum entanglement. This deep dive is taking us way deeper into the unexplained than I thought we'd go.
And we're not done yet. The Anokhi Kahani video keeps going, asking even more interesting questions about reality, consciousness, and the limits of what we can perceive.
But for now, let's just take a breather and think about everything we've learned. We've covered a lot of ground, and some of these topics can be pretty disturbing. Wow, I feel like we just went through a tornado of creepy stories and mind-blowing ideas. Haunted places, people vanishing, shadowy figures, and even predicting death. Makes you think, what if reality's not as solid as we think it is?
That's exactly it, right? These stories, whether you believe them or not, they make us question everything we think we know. They open up the possibility that there's more to reality than what we see on the surface.
I'll admit, even for someone who loves a good mystery, some of these stories have definitely freaked me out a bit. But you know, beyond all the chills and thrills, I think there's a really important lesson here about how we look at things.
Absolutely. Our beliefs, our experiences, our culture, it all shapes how we see the world. What one person might see as a paranormal event, someone else might have a perfectly normal explanation for.
It makes you wonder, what if some of these unexplained things are just like glimpses into parts of reality that we don't have the tools to understand yet?
Now that's an interesting thought. It reminds me of how science is always changing. What seems like magic or supernatural today could have a scientific explanation tomorrow.
Okay, but let's be real. There's a part of us that just loves the mystery of it all, that little voice that whispers, what if there really are forces out there that we can't even comprehend? I'm curious, what stood out to you the most from all this?
You know, I think it's the idea of interconnectedness that keeps popping up. Haunted places absorbing the energy of past events, children tapping into a collective unconscious, even quantum entanglement, linking us to the future. It all suggests that we're not as separate from each other or from the universe as we might think.
That's a really insightful point, and it brings me back to what we were talking about earlier, haunted locations holding on to the residual energy of the past. It's like those places are a link between then and now, reminding us that history is not just something in a textbook, it's part of the world around us.
Exactly. And that circles back to the main question the Anokhi Kahani video asks. Are these stories a window into a hidden reality, or are they just figments of our imagination? I don't think there's an easy answer. Maybe the real question is, does it even matter?
Whoa, that's deep. So you're saying it's not about proving or disproving these stories, it's about what they tell us about ourselves, about our hopes and fears, and that fascination we have with the mysteries of life.
Exactly. Whether you approach these stories with wonder, skepticism, or a bit of both, they make you think about the big stuff, life, death, what reality even is. And maybe, just maybe, we learn something new about ourselves and the world around us along the way.
This has been an amazing journey. We've heard some seriously spooky stories, explored some wild theories, and even questioned our own perceptions. But as we wrap up this deep dive into the unexplained, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought. Never be afraid to explore the unknown. Embrace your curiosity, question everything, and always keep searching for answers. Because even when you're faced with the biggest mysteries, there's always something to learn, something to discover. And hey, you might even uncover some hidden truths about yourself in the process.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So to everyone listening, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and most importantly, hold on to that sense of wonder. The world's full of mysteries just waiting to be uncovered.
Until next time, stay curious.